Hello, today we're going to talk about Child Find activities. Child Find is part of IDEA. It's an activity that public schools or public education systems must do on an ongoing basis in order to identify children with special needs. This does not just include children in attendance at the public school, but maybe they are at a private school within their district, or maybe they're attending a preschool or an infancy program outside of the public district. Child Find is the obligation to search for a possible child with special needs, to locate where those children may be, then to identify them specifically, and then to evaluate and determine whether or not a child has special needs. Before we evaluate a child, oftentimes we will ask, have we used response to intervention to help provide strategies and interventions to help the child get back on track? Many districts that I've talked with believe that RTI is an obligation prior to evaluation, and it's quite the opposite. As you will see from our course, OSEP IDEA wrote a letter to all districts in the country indicating that RTI cannot be used as an excuse not to assess a child. Therefore, RTI does not have to be implemented prior to a special education assessment. Oftentimes, school districts, private schools have student study teams, and they may also be used prior to the obligation to test for disability. However, here again, just like RTI, a child going through the student study team process is not an obligation, nor can it hold someone back from being assessed for a special education need. We must gain parent written permission in order to assess them, and we must also take into consideration that we no longer have to adhere by the discrepancy model, the difference between a child's IQ and the child's achievement level. We can use RTI to identify a specific learning disability. However, we can also use the discrepancy model. However, one cannot discount the other, that if a disability is identified through either the discrepancy model or RTI, we must identify that child. Members of the multidisciplinary team, first and foremost, must include the parent. The parent knows the child best of all. They engage with the child far more often than the school does. So parents, school psychologists, special education teachers, general education teachers, school administrators, speech and language professionals, adaptive PE teachers, occupational therapists, physical therapists, and advocates for the child. The multidisciplinary team can be made up of a wide variety of individuals. Oftentimes, our multidisciplinary teams are also comprised of school nurses or someone from the medical field. Nurses do their screening for both hearing and vision, prenatal history, and developmental growth. Much of this information they gather from the parent. If the parent is not pleased with the public school assessment, they can request an independent evaluation. This is done by a private school psychologist, educational psychologist, somewhere in the community, could even be done by a medical doctor. The district must accept the IEE, read through it, evaluate it, and then make a determination based on this new additional evidence as to whether or not the child has a disability. Other factors we need to take into play when we're doing Child Find activities is culture and language. Do our assessment tools reflect cultural norms? Do they also reflect children with English as a second language? Or are the assessments that we're using pretty much normed on a white middle-class population? We also need to take into account poverty, and we also need to take into account the lack of opportunity for that child to attend school. Not all children start at school at kindergarten, preschool. Sometimes due to living environments, family situations, children don't start school on time, even though by law they should have. And we need to take these things into consideration. Remember, we need to make sure that we're serving the whole child and not just focused on academics. What does the child as a whole need in order to make academic gains?